Another morning here, off for another easy 15-20 with the pack. So my next little chat, number 6 in the series. I've spoken about 5 so far, all about physical adaptation. We went through aerobic, muscular endurance, technique, strength, and then lactate clearance. Those are all the primary adaptations to perform an endurance that you need. The 6th one is specificity. So it's really getting used to the race conditions and making sure you have them nailed. So it's not so much about physical adaptation, it's actually more about mental adaptations, being prepared to race in the conditions that you're going into. So I think there's about 4 major portions to specificity. Those being the technical side of it. You want to be, for instance, in a triathlon or an Ironman or 70.3, you want to be down on the bars as much as possible and streamlined. Now if you're riding and you're training either on a road bike or even on a TT bike with lots of traffic lights and roundabouts, you're generally sitting up and getting down for shorter periods of time. You've got to get used to staying on the bars for the whole race. And that's just one example. If you're in an ultra, it's going to be hills, rocks, scrambling. You've got to train for that. It's a technical ability to run downhill. Again, you've got to, when you're coming up to your race, you've got to get on in a familiar or similar terrain as you'd be racing with. Get used to those environmental conditions and the positions, etc., that you actually need to hold to perform well. So get specific around the terrain that you're actually going to be racing with. Number 2 is nutrition, particularly long races. Sometimes when you train, we're training at a different intensity to what we're racing for a different duration. So again, you want to mimic. Quite often, if we do a long ride on an Ironman, we'll be doing our 5-hour ride, but we're probably going to be doing it at a lower intensity that we're going to be racing. Now, when at race day, you're going to be sustaining probably a high intensity for longer. Nutritional needs go up. Now, if you haven't practiced that nutritional need, absorbing as much as you need to do at race intensity, it's going to be problematic. So again, it's getting those periods of time to simulate that. It's the same, marathon training, as again, you're going to be going for longer at an intensity. You need to understand how your body's going to work with sustainable nutrition and how you can absorb and what you can absorb, and practicing the nutrition that you're going to be consuming on race day and making sure that you're not going to have issues with that. Number 3 is climate. Again, where we train, it's generally going to be maybe different to where we're actually going to race. It might be elevation, it may be heat, cold, humidity. All those factors are going to severely impact our race day. So we try to actually simulate those environments to actually get the most, so we actually know how our body's going to deal with it and even adapt. For example, I'm heading off in just over a month to Sahara for disables. So I'm doing a lot of training on sand, but in terms of climate, it's about the heat and humidity. There's no humidity there, but it's going to be hot. It's going to be 40 degrees. So I'm spending time in my garage in Brisbane, sitting at low 30s. So I close the garage, switch off the fan, get on the treadmill, and get used to running with that discomfort of the heat. We've got a high dew point here, which means 33 here is 40, feels like 40. So I'm simulating that environment, the discomfort that I'll probably be facing in the desert. This is one example, but in terms of climate, know what you're going into, do the adjustments. If it's going to be cold water, you've got to swim in cold water. You've got to get used to it. So again, climate is really important. You've got to know what you're dealing with. The last one is probably the most important, and that is the suffering. You got to get used to the suffering. A lot of people, when they sign up for races, they're thinking about the suffering. They've got something to prove to themselves or others, or whatever reason they're racing. But it's synonymous with endurance. As people comment to say, how do you do that? Or why do you do that? Because they know there's suffering associated with it. But then far too often I see people sign up for the suffering, but when they get to race day, they expect it to be easy to moderate. When it gets really hard, they just slow down or bail. A really good race is where you understand that, and in the last portions of the race, you suffer greatly, but you don't cave. All right. Now, suffering is a practiced art. You can't just go there and train soft. Train, as I've said, for the physical adaptations only, and then get to race day and you haven't practiced. You're not used to suffering. Now, the suffering comes with training that is probably going to break you down a little bit more than you should, which gets in the way of adaptations. So occasionally, I put it over, once a month, you got to do something a little bit crazy. You've got to get into that suffering realm and get used to suffering, get used to pushing beyond, getting used to holding on, thinking you can't finish what you're doing on a day. Get into that headspace of suffering. It is a practice. It gets that, well, hard to say. It doesn't really get easier, but you get used to it. And this is what I find is probably the big one. Combined, if you can pace a race well, you can suffer, not from the beginning, but get yourself in a position where you perform a balanced race, but the last portion, you can really suffer and get through it. Those are the ones that give you the biggest result, give you the biggest reward, and probably going to be right up there in terms of your best performance. Specificity, really important in training. Tend to do it around about 6 to 8 weeks out. You start doing as part of your build, you start putting in your specificity. Hope this helps. See ya.